In this video, I'm going to show you how to literally save a year of your life. I am 17, almost 18, and in terms of life and self-improvement, I'm about at that point where I've been through the cycle of relapsing and coming back and not having clarity in my goals and then gaining clarity, hitting new highs and new lows, trying to make progress and not being able to stay consistent hundreds of times. And I'm finally getting to the point where I'm making some more consistent progress. I'm really learning a lot in areas like relationships, my faith, and my work, my craft, my goals. So if that's you, if you were like me for the past couple years where you're trying to make progress but can't be consistent, or you just feel like you're not able to get to that next level, then I think this video is going to be extremely helpful. As someone who obviously cares about how they spend their time, my goal is to make this the best spend of your time, the highest ROI video I can. This video is going to be kind of like a highlight reel movie of this year of 2024. It's going to be all of the best lessons I've learned, the things that actually have created real progress in my life without the fluff, without the filler, without the extra shots, without the 3-minute intros of other things going on before you get to the meat of the video. I'm just going to cut together the best parts. My goal is that this video actually saves you time. Get a snack, get a notebook, write down the best parts. I'm going to try to make it mostly just the one-liners, the real information, the real substance, and hopefully this can save you a year of your life. Enjoy the best of 2024. Eat the frog. It's not that you won't be productive if you don't do this, you just won't win against the people who do. Luckily, this technique is extremely simple. Do the hardest, most important, most high leverage task first thing in the day, and do it early. Spend a good chunk of time on this, 30 to 45 minutes at least, but shoot for far more. Eating the frog as the first thing you do in your day is gonna set your day up in a structure where you're gonna feel successful. Borderline fulfillment if you do it right. What I mean by that is that if you start your day off with the hardest and most important task first thing in the day, you give yourself an early win, giving you motivation to be productive the rest of the day. And also you give yourself this anxiety-free permission to do more fun and recreational things later in the day. But you get to do these fun things without anything looming over your head. Because like a productivity genius, you got those looming activities out of the way first thing in the day. Make sure that where you're working isn't so messy that you have to continually keep moving stuff out of the way while you're working. You must move your phone out of sight. Don't just turn it off or flip it over on your desk or something. It has to be out of sight, and you need to build this habit. Your brain is not meant for task switching. Every time you get a notification or hear a buzz or even just see your screen light up, your brain tries to switch tasks. And the killer news that I'm about to drop on you is that it takes your brain about 15 minutes to get back into deep focus. And this happens every time you task switch. You're deep in focused work, and then you see your screen light up. You pick up your phone and you read who the message was from. You don't even read the message. Then you turn it back off and put it away. And then it takes you 15 minutes to get back into good focus. Your brain is really not built for this type of stuff. So seriously, out of sight, out of mind. Make small promises. Basically, to build a new self-image, you need to build a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. And to do that, you must start small. Make small promises to yourself and keep them. And with a little bit of time, you'll build a small stack of wins that will slowly start to change how you see yourself. For instance, after going to the gym for a few months, I wasn't jacked or anything, but I started to see myself as someone who went to the gym. That was just something I did. It's just who I was. When you read a book, I know this is gonna sound sacrilegious, you don't have to read every word on every page cover to cover before you put it down or start reading another book. This is so huge. This is a huge mental framework that I want to get across to you about reading. Books are tools. That mindset has not only saved me so much time, but has absolutely changed the game. Books are tools. And if you read a third of the way through the book and you think to yourself, this doesn't really apply to me right now. It's interesting and maybe it's helpful, but it's not actually helping me in any conceivable way. It's not very relevant to me. Put the book down. Close the book. It's not a sin. And if you find another book that's more interesting to you, that's more relevant to you, more helpful to you, a book that talks about something that will clearly help you achieve your goals, you You don't have to finish that first irrelevant book that you started reading earlier. You actually only live once. You only have so much time and so much energy. And if a different tool will solve the problem better, then use it. If I wanted to waste my time with reading, there are a few very clear steps I would take. I would consistently read books that don't benefit me. If I find a book that interests me at all, I'll start to read it, and I won't let myself put it down until I read every word on every page cover to cover. If I put down a book when it stops becoming relevant to me, or when I stop enjoying it, I might just slip into being productive, and we can't have that. I would only read any book that I read once, even if it was life-changing and super helpful. If I read it more than once, I might actually start to retain what I'm reading, and that would be productive. I would treat reading like a game, and each book would be another tally on the scoreboard. The only point of the game is to get as many tallies on that scoreboard as possible. So I read a book, cover to cover of course, and then I finish the book and I put it on the shelf and move on to a different book and never go back to the one I just read. Because I'm addicted to getting that feeling of putting more tallies on the scoreboard. Finally, I would make an effort to just read as many books as possible. I'd maybe try to aim for one a week. This way it's sure that I probably won't retain anything that I'm reading, because just like watching content on YouTube, it's constant input. Constant input creates little to no time for output, and especially helps when you're trying to forget everything that you just read.
Memory does not occur by repeated exposure. So rereading or reconsuming isn't the best way to retain anything. Memory occurs by repeated recall, not repeated exposure. The act of flipping through the archives of your mind, finding that information, pulling it out, and applying it is practically how you really retain something. Trust me. This chapter will be slept on, but it's exceedingly transformative. The most underrated aspect when it comes to getting better at consuming is consuming less. You have to limit your inputs if you want to genuinely retain what you consume. And better yet, have your life changed by it. Too much music and too many videos and too much food, it saps the mental energy and bandwidth. Think about it like this. The more you consume, the more mental energy you are dispersing and giving away. But deeply ingraining and retaining information also takes mental energy. If you are constantly emptying your tank of mental energy by constantly letting it drip out through nonstop music and videos, you won't have enough left over to fuel the process of remembering, the process of turning information into knowledge. You'll be trying to study for a test, but you have a song stuck in your head. You'll be reading and have so little mental energy and mindfulness that you have to keep rereading the same page over and over. There is a season for consuming wide and trying to gather as much information as you can at once. But the most important and neglected season is the season that comes after that. The season of consuming deep. The season of limiting your input. Taking the best resources you found and using your full fuel tank of mental energy simply for understanding.
But this is the practical way to apply don't care what other people think about you. This is the frame, the lens in which to view the world through. This is the question to ask yourself. Would the man I want to become do this? What would the man I want to become do? And this can apply in any specific scenario, like what would a millionaire do? What would a person with 1 million subscribers do? What would someone with a 10 out of 10 physique do? What would someone ultra healthy do? It can apply circumstantially, but in general, you can also be more of like a identity thing. What would the person that I want to become do? And that is not caring what other people think. It's valuing the opinion you have of you and the desire you have above what the expectation is that is placed upon you.
Early in the summer, although I was definitely in a rut, there was this week-ish or so period of perfection. Okay, not literally, but one night I was contemplating this idea of killing myself. Metaphorically, of course, killing the current version of myself. This idea of pushing harder every time I feel friction, as in making friction the cue to push harder. And so for about a week, I did just that. It was one of, if not the most productive periods of my life in the past however long that I could remember. I understood that each time I felt friction but then pushed harder, this little act of micro rebellion against myself was another knife in the heart of the old me. But this is the crazy part. In general, this story isn't really uncommon to anyone. We all go through periods of hyper-productivity and then fall back into a rut. It's a pretty common cycle. But what was interesting about this experience was that there was no motivation
motivation. There was no paradigmatic worldview shift that I went under. There was no dramatic thing in my life that had happened. There were no stakes in my life. There was no supercharged emotion behind it. I just made the decision, and then I acted on that decision. And it worked. This was huge for me, because not only did it show me that I can push through things even when they're hard and even when they suck, but it also showed me that in any rut that I fall into in the future, in a much larger capacity than I would like to admit, is on me. I can get out of it. It just involves starting. Alex Hormozi has this quote that goes something along the lines of, "The perfect time to start is the day you decide you want to become future you." I figured out that I can actually do that. I don't need a catalyst to make the decision. I can just make that decision and act in that in every step I take.
After scripting for literally hours, I was starting to lose focus. I was checking the time, my thoughts were starting to shift to other things, and I was getting bored. I looked up on my desk and I saw this bag of Ghirardelli dark chocolate macchiato squares. This stuff is the bomb. And I thought, oh, I'll have a little bite of chocolate, and that will give me a spike in dopamine, and that dopamine will be enough motivation to finish the script. And then, no joke, my hand is literally halfway to the bag, right about here, and I remembered what I learned about dopamine in that mental mastery course. I remembered that a quick spike of dopamine will give me a quick fall off too, soon after leaving me empty and unmotivated. Remembering that I can use the knowledge I have about dopamine to my advantage, I decide to try something I've never done before. I get up, I go into a completely different room, and I sit down and I start a 5-minute timer. I decided that I was going to meditate for 5 minutes. From very, very little stimulation while scripting, intuitively younger Noah would have thought I need a little bit of stimulation to kick myself back into gear. But instead, I decided to do what I learned about and do something mentally challenging and difficult that had even lower stimulation in hopes that my brain would rebound back to me some motivation and dopamine. And it worked. It worked like literally nothing else has ever worked. You know how hours after doing the same task, after working, you feel like your battery's been drained? Literally in that span of 5 minutes of meditation, it completely filled my battery. Full charge. And after that, I was more productive than I'd been in a very, very long time. I finished the script and I had energy through the rest of the night after too. It was this wildly long stream of motivation and energy that came from a counterintuitive source. You've probably caught along with the concept and science at work here, but to be clear, let me show you how to exactly hot wire your brain to giving you energy and motivation. Taking a cold shower, or meditating, or staring at a wall, or stretching. What do these all have in common? They all sound monotonous and not exciting at all? Yes, exactly. That is the exact point. Essentially, you have to do a challenging, non-stimulating, boring, maybe even painful task. But hear me, the non-stimulating part is so vital here. A lot of people think of taking a break as sitting on the couch and scrolling on TikTok for a few minutes or going to get a bite to eat, just like I was gonna do with that chocolate. But this does the exact opposite of what you think it will do. By pressing pleasure, your brain will give you pain. But by doing something that has little to no stimulation, even less stimulation than the hard work task you were doing, your brain will automatically, on a silver platter, just serve you motivation.
The first and most painful step in the process of gaining clarity is getting clarity on what your destination is. What do you actually want? The painful part comes when you ask why. What are you actually aiming for? Come up with a goal that you have, if you have one. And if you don't have a goal, pick something in your life that you don't like and decide to aim for the opposite. Once you have that goal in mind, you need to ask yourself, why do I value this? What's the point in achieving this? And continue to ask yourself why. Continue to dig deeper. You need to have a core reason for chasing your goal. It cannot be a dollar amount or a specific percent body fat. There has to be something deeper. But you need to understand how to ask the right why. Let's say your goal is you want to make $1 million and you ask yourself why, and you're like, because I want to buy a luxury car. The next why is not, why do you want to buy an Audi R8? That is not the correct why. The next why is, why do you want an expensive car? You can see that it's very easy to fall into the trap of asking about the specifics of the goal rather than asking about the motivations and values behind the goal. You want to go deeper, you don't want to be more specific about the shallow.
You want there to be this give and take tension in the conversation constantly. If they say something that you genuinely appreciate or admire, mention it. If they say something that you have a strong opinion about, be honest and make it known that you're being honest. Of course, the goal with a deep conversation is not to be instigative, but the percentage point of how deep you're going to go is directly correlated to the amount of honesty you're willing to have. My point is this: give your thoughts to, pour out yourself for them as well, and comment strategically. A rule that my friend and I came up with after exclusively trying to have deep conversations with an exclusive group of people for a short time. Not the play, by the way. The depth of the conversation is almost always divided by the number of people in the conversation. I'm not saying that you need to be a horrible human being and just separate yourself from everyone you don't want to interact. But an unfortunate fact is the more people in the conversation, the harder it is to go deeper. There is actually social science behind this. Essentially, the more people in a social network, the more one-on-one connections between each person in the group has to be healthy, or else everything else bursts into flame. The first time I learned about this theory, it was absolutely wild to me, especially since my friend and I had a similar hypothesis just from existing. But even on a basic level, it makes sense. Depth will be built on trust. And let's say you have a group of 3 people, the amount of trust will be leveled off at the least amount of trust someone else has for someone in that group. A chain's only as strong as its weakest link, and a group of friends only goes as deep as its weakest level of trust with someone else.
I talk about clarity a lot because I think clarity is so underrated. The act of gaining clarity is like such an obvious thing that should be a part of everyone's lives that just no one focuses on. My friend Kenny, we were talking one time and he was like, yeah man, it's basically all about clarity and intention. Because what I'm getting at is that all of these habits and actions that we associate with self-improvement could be useful, but if you don't have intention, if you don't have a specific purpose in mind for why you're doing them and you don't know exactly how they relate to you improving your goals, then it's kind of useless. I made a video about this infinity years ago. I think I called it self-improvement is not taking action, because doing self-improvement habits just to do them is really just fulfilling an aesthetic.
If something major went wrong in my day, or some crazy cloudy sky event, something that really ruined the mood, the rest of the day, maybe even the next day, I would justify not taking action, not doing something. Which not only does it go against the whole idea of how to get out of a rut is to take action. There's a cycle I learned when I used to do karate. My instructor told me the cycle of essentially anything is it goes from motivation to inspiration to action. But you can start anywhere in that cycle, and everyone thinks they need to start at either motivation or inspiration, but you can start at action. The best way to get out of a rut is to act like you're not in one. But also, it's something that I think not a lot of people are aware of until they take the time to be like extra self-aware, self-conscious, which is like, there's this thing called the binge fallacy, which is that you mess up on one thing and you justify continually messing up, continually grabbing the shovel and digging the grave deeper and deeper, digging the void deeper and deeper because you messed up on this one thing. And I've dealt with this in a multitude of areas in my life, but for an example, like if you were on a diet and just couldn't resist yourself, your friends brought to school or brought to work some free donuts and you had a donut and you're like, I messed up on my diet. So then you have a bag of chips because you're like, well, I already messed up. I already messed up today. I'm already past my calorie intake that I was supposed to have. I'm already past the sugar intake. Today's a waste. Today's a cheat day. When you think about it objectively and you take a step back, there's no real good reason why you should continue to mess up or relapse or do something wrong if you messed up once. Because if the thing, like for example, if you're trying to resist something
and then you do it, and you mess up, and you, I don't know, relapse, or you eat the donut or something, you continuing to binge after that, committing the binge fallacy, is telling your brain, or maybe you believe this consciously, that the very thing you think is bad for you is actually the reward. And you have control over so little in your life that you might as well take authority over the things you can, over the very few spaces in your life that you actually have control over. And one of the only places that you have control over, one of the only arenas you have any say in, is how you respond. And if nothing can happen and you can choose to be in a bad mood, then nothing can happen and you can choose to be in a good mood. It's not like I'm coming from this place where I just freaking won the lottery or something. I have also not been having the best time. But you gotta remember though that they're still good. The good things don't become bad because there are bad things. Not even just in the binge fallacy sense where it's oh, I did this bad thing, so I might as well do a bunch of bad things because for some reason I think that they're the reward. But also in the sense that if you do a bad thing, and I know that shame has a huge part to play in this, but if you do a bad thing and then you do a good thing, the good thing didn't just suddenly lose its goodness. It didn't just stop being good. Now, it might not feel as good. It might feel emptier. You might feel more shame. You might feel like you don't deserve, or you can't let yourself have the reward of the good thing. And that might be justified, but it doesn't really matter because the good thing didn't change.
This autist self-improvement attitude, you've forsaken a large chunk of self-improvement, which is getting better at social interactions. A lot of people just aren't good socially. They don't know how to be social well, and so they avoid being social. But then they cope and cover it up with a nice packaging of, I'm working on myself, or something like that. In reality, you don't go out, because you can't go out, because you don't know what you would do if you went out, and that terrifies you. At least, it terrified me. Still kind of does, actually. Learning to get better at making friends and being social and flirting with girls and having fun with other people socially is all part of self-improvement. Self-improvement, as my friend Kenny put it, is the act of moving the current self to the ideal self. Or in simpler terms, the act of becoming he who can. So self-improvement isn't about cooping yourself up in your room and working alone for the rest of your life. It's not about being the lone wolf alone with a hoodie on at the gym. And it's not about earning a ton of money in secret. It's not about all of that. It also includes learning to be social, cultivating a group of friends, a group of brothers, learning how to get a wife, etc.
So when filming this vlog over the past week, I've kind of had this thought ruminating in my mind that I wanted to share with you, which is that transformation happens through action. And it became abundantly more relevant to me just recently because I was making progress and then I relapsed and I stumbled and I realized what it actually comes down to, what separates you from your competition, what separates you from being exceptional, and I'm speaking to myself here, is how quickly you can rebound from stumbling off the path. I'm listening to this podcast, How to Win at Anything, from Alex Hormozy, and he mentioned something, which is that there's a saying, be, do, have. But what it really comes down to is just do, because who you are, the be, is defined by what you do, and what you have is defined by what you do. So really you can shorten the phrase to just do, which is that having comes after do. Part of me feels like I'm not able to fully commit to do the actions, to actually fully lock in until I've completely quit all of the bad habits and I completely have my life in order and I have my sleep in order, until all of the circumstances become correct. But what that really is saying to myself is I'm not going to allow myself to be in full pursuit of the man that I want to become until I am the man that I want to become. It's reversing the order with which things are supposed to happen. I'm supposed to become the man that I want to become, and then I will have the attributes of not engaging in the bad habits, of being more focused. It's almost like I'm asking for the result before I commit to the process with which I get the result from. And it all really comes back to the idea that transformation actually happens through action. Regardless of whether I deserve it or not, or whether I've quit all of the bad habits and I've checked all of these boxes, I can still do the actions
that will eventually make me the man that I want to become, regardless of whether I deserve it or not.
Progress is the biggest motivator. Progress builds momentum, which gives inherent motivation to whatever you're doing, because that momentum lowers the threshold of pain that is required to break through to do that task. So not only is waking up early a few days an incredible momentum builder to continue waking up early, but making progress anywhere in your life makes it easier to make progress anywhere else in your life.
A lot of times you see young men getting onto self-improvement from the gym. They start going to the gym, they get addicted to it, and it begs the question, why? Why does going to the gym inherently translate to the desire to improve the rest of your life? The reason is because you can see controllable and noticeable progress. Until you come to the realization in your mind that you can actually make progress in your life, you'll never truly understand motivation. In hopes to earn love, respect, and trust from the person that it's hardest to earn it from, which is yourself, you want to start building up a stack of proof. Start doing things that you can see noticeable, controllable progress in. Start going to the gym. Start increasing your intelligence. Start saving money. Actually taking action is the biggest motivator. You never, ever, 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 ever get out of a rut by staying in the rut willingly. Until I realized that the only way to feel motivated was to act as if I were. I was beholden to this horrible cycle of complacency. Quick bursts of passion, then slumps, then quick bursts of passion, then slumps. Once you start taking action and doing things that create noticeable progress, notice it. Make it clear to yourself. Be proud of the little bit that you've done, and specifically understand, deeply understand, how what you've done and the progress that you've made relates to you accomplishing your goals and relates to you getting one step closer to your core goal. Progress is the biggest motivator.
You have to understand explicitly exactly what you are going to do when you wake up, and you have to make it matter to you. Do not gloss over that last sentence. It is the way to wake up early.
Especially before trying to be productive, but also just in general, consume better foods. Carb loading or just eating a bunch of unhealthy food before you try to be productive is like trying to go rock climbing after you just cut off your hands. You don't want to be in that situation. Limit and refine your consumption. I've said this so many times in so many videos before. And because of that, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. But genuinely, it's so important and it makes such an impact. Any friction you might be hearing in your head is cope. Realize that. If your brain is trying to vouch for you to do something that's unhealthy, that you know is unhealthy, it's coping. Your brain isn't on your side for this. At least the brain you have now. But like our inputs, that can be refined. Take this seriously. Dude, I've said this so many times, it's not hard.
Goals are just a vessel with which you work on yourself through. You are the project. The process of achieving goals is becoming he who can achieve that goal. It's not gaining the material thing. If I was the type of person who could earn $1 billion, I would have $1 billion. The goal of getting $1 billion is not to have a liquid billion, it's to be the type of person who can achieve a liquid billion, if that makes any sense.
And then alignment. And what I mean by alignment is it not only that through the process of the first 3 steps that you will slowly align with your ideal version of yourself, with the life that you are designing that you want, but what I meant when I said alignment is once you do the first 3 with a lot of reps, it becomes who you are. Whatever thing you are self-improving. And once it becomes who you are, the application takes no effort because it is you. And it's just what you do. And now I would discourage, like, what I'm talking about is the things that you are working on become a part of your identity. And I would discourage taking your identity, your ultimate identity, in those things because they are temporary. Specifically titles. Don't take your identity in titles. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not a YouTuber. That's not my identity. Because if one day YouTube shut down, now I have an identity crisis on my hands. But I am creative, I am disciplined, I am entrepreneurial, da-da-da-da-da. And even then, those things are temporary. So I don't take my ultimate identity in those, but I'm a Christian, so for the time that I'm here on earth, I take kind of subsets of my identity in those character qualities. Because if you're a consistent person, that's a lot better than being a consistent gym rat. Because you can be consistent at the gym and inconsistent in every other area. So I'm not going to take my identity in being a gym rat. I'm going to take my identity in being a consistent person. And once you align what you're doing with who you are, what you're doing takes zero effort at all. You're not fighting upstream anymore. It just, the direction of the stream goes in the right direction. And that's the goal. That's the whole thing of this self-improvement stuff, which is like, I know these are the good things to be doing. I want to stop doing the bad things, and I want to only do the good things, and then I will reap the benefits from those. And alignment is just making this column who you are. You just do those things, and then it doesn't take effort to not do the bad and do the good, because that's just what you do. I am disciplined, so I'm disciplined. So I'm disciplined and I'm hardworking. So obviously I'm going to do a 90-minute work block each day. That doesn't take effort. That's just what I do.
The next step is figuring out where you are. Where are you struggling? What are your limiting factors? This is where complete subordination to the truth really comes into play. Here are some questions that I like to ask myself. What are my biggest limiting factors? Am I the cause of these limiting factors? The answer is yes. What reasons for the circumstances am I not able to accept when it comes to where I'm at in life? What are the reasons I'm doing what I do on a day-to-day basis? Essentially, like in the previous step, just gaining clarity on motivation and values, developing mindfulness, and asking yourself why in the midst of your day before interactions with anyone or anything is huge. Some more questions might be, what is required to transition into a new season? What is required to achieve my goals? What would I have to do, and what would make it unreasonable for me to not achieve my goals? And then you kind of want to attack the presuppositions you hold. What questions am I not willing to ask myself? What truths am I avoiding? What conversations do I need to have that I haven't yet? What relationships do I need to get rid of? What things should I focus on that I've convinced myself are not necessary? And what things should I stop focusing on that I've convinced myself are? Not only do you want to gain a couple other questions that I'm going to be personally asking myself is, what would an ideal day for me look like? What do I want my brand to be? Ask yourself questions that make you uncomfortable, and don't wait until you have motivation to start gaining clarity. Motivation comes from purpose. Purpose comes from having a direction, having a purpose. Having a direction comes from clarity. You can start anywhere in the cycle, but it doesn't really make sense to wait for motivation.
Thank you for watching this movie of the best lessons that I've learned this year. I really hope this video brought you value. As you saw, everything in this video I actually did. And so I know that what I talked about brought me value. And I can't stress this enough, it's not beneficial unless you apply it. Whatever really stuck with you from this video, focus on that. Take a week at least and just focus on implementing that. There are big things in store for next year, and I'm not just saying that. Very excited, very excited. Thank you all for the incredible support this year. Thank you to the people who stuck around, and hi to all the new people. Thank you for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.